Let's not fool ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is kind of a piece of shit at this point. It's a giant tourist trap designed by dinosaurs pandering to the masses. But even so, as pointless, as worthless as it truly is, it's still fun to bitch, to moan, and to debate. So without further ado, with the help of Bryce Talks Metal, let's bitch, moan, and debate who belongs still in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, who we want to be there and who needs to be there in the near future. Let's officially start. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Metal Meltdown. Sloppy editing here. Today, because we all love the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the greatest single building in the history of mankind, we're talking about bands that we love, that we want in the Hall of Fame or we need in the Hall of Fame. And I couldn't think of a better person to bring on than you, Bryce, because you are knowledgeable. You know your shit. You've bitched about the Hall of Fame before, just like me. This is a match made in heaven when you think about it.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Robert. Great to be here. And anytime there's a chance to talk shit about the Rock Hall, I'll be there. So
and
happy to do this.
I know I just asked you off camera, but just for the fine people at home, just general thoughts on the recent inductees.
I would not have picked any of them. I think it's a disgrace putting people in that aren't even rock into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's like, just change it to the Music Hall of Fame at this point. If you're going to keep doing this, people like Jay-Z, it's like, and you're leaving out all-time classic bands and people that we're going to talk about here today, and you're putting in rap artists and hip-hop artists, some country and other stuff in the past. It just makes zero sense to me. So
truth be told, I've never had much of an issue with like artists who are like country or pop or hip hop being in the Hall of Fame, so long as they can justify why they would prioritize that over a rock band. Like in the case of Michael Jackson or Prince or the Beastie Boys, it's like, all right, fair enough.
Those are understandable. Yeah.
Yeah. But in the case of Jay-Z, it's like, are we really going to argue that Jay-Z is more influential to rock than Iron Maiden or the New York Dolls or whoever the fuck else was nominated this year? Even in the world of hip hop, like really Tribe Called Quest, Rage Against the Machine. You know what? I'm getting off topic. Why don't you start us off, since we're already in bitch mode? Why don't you start off with the first band that you feel should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame while I pull up my list?
All right. So with mine, I'm going 10-1, just kind of in order with it. And it's not necessarily my 10 favorite bands, because there's several that are my favorites that I'm not going to include here today. But I'm trying to go with like an objective historical thing mixed with my personal favorites. So that being said, my number 10 is going to be Bad Company. And this is just a band that you hear the name, you're like, how are they possibly not inducted? Paul Rodgers, one of the all-time best singers. He was in the band Free previous to Bad Company, which could and should be in the Rock Hall as well. But I think Bad Company took it to another level with him. Overall, the first two albums, specifically the debut, self-titled from 1974 and Straight Shooter from 1975, really, if you turn on classic rock radio, you probably hear like 8 songs from the two of those albums, just all over. Looking at some of these I wrote down. Well, first off, they've sold 40 million albums worldwide. That's extremely impressive. The first album went 5 times platinum in the United States. The second one, 3 times platinum. Can't Get Enough, Ready for Love, the title track, Bad Company, which is great. Moving On, Good Lovin' Gone Bad, Feel Like Making Love, to name a few, just all-time great classic rock songs that you would think would be good enough to get them in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but apparently not. So that's my number 10. Absolutely should be there. Bad Company. So
you know what's funny about that Bad Company thing is that in Canada, we have this, I won't bore you all with the specifics, but in Canada, we have this very stupid law, which means the Canadian rock stations can only play X amount of Canadian content. And yet, despite that, whenever I turn on a classic rock station, I will always hear something from Bad Company, specifically something from those first 2 albums. They are still so popular. Paul Rodgers, an iconic rock singer. No argument there whatsoever. Bad Company absolutely belongs in the Hall of Fame. Just a heads up, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, there are hundreds of singers and bands and producers that belong in the Hall of Fame. Just, I'm sorry if we left out someone. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not really going in any particular order. I just wrote down names. The first one, it's a name that's probably going to pop up on your list as well. I wrote that down knowing it probably would. First one for me is Motorhead, man. What can I say about Motorhead that hasn't already been said? They might not have the record sales of Bad Company or even some of the other bands we've talked about, but they are massively influential to speed metal, to heavy metal, to hard rock, even to punk rock. They're one of these few bands that kind of perfectly exists in all these corners of the rock universe. Lemmy Kilmister himself is a rock titan. I mean, the dude was a fucking roadie for Jimi Hendrix. He played in Hawkwind, and then he went on to make one of the coolest fucking rock and roll bands of all time. It boggles my mind that a band as influential and iconic as Motorhead is not in the Hall of Fame, and they've come damn close. So the Hall of Fame knows they exist. They just won't acknowledge them officially, I guess. I don't know.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that being said, Motorhead, I love them. And I was actually in LA last week, and I was at Lemmy's grave. So that's
oh shit, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, I visited his grave, Ronnie James Dio's grave, right across from him. It really just an amazing cemetery over there in LA. It's called Forest Lawn. Just if anyone ever gets a chance, it's just beautiful and amazing to see. So definitely recommend to go check that out. Anyone that's in the area.
God damn, I'm still locked up. I'll go to LA just for that. Hell, I'll go there just to get out of here.
For sure. Yeah, that's a great pick though, for sure. And all right, so moving on to my number 9 is going to be Foreigner. Another great classic rock band that, again, you hear all over the radio. So many great classic hits. 50 million albums sold worldwide. You know, their first 4 albums went at least 5 times platinum in the United States, and that is a lot. That's like amazing sales. Really great melodic vocals. The guitar playing is great. Looking again, you can just list off so many of their songs you constantly hear on classic rock radio. Jukebox Hero, I've always thought is a really cool one. Double Vision, Hot Blooded, Cold as Ice, feels like the first time to name some. But again, great classic band that you would think are in the Rock Hall of Fame, but somehow they're not. It's just mind blowing to me. But yeah, Foreigner, that's my number 9.
They're a huge influence on like a lot of other like rock and metal bands that pop up. I mean, Metallica cites them as a huge influence. And like they had like multiple singers and multiple guitarists like way early on, which is amazing to balance. If you ask me, like when we think multi-man bands, we think of like shit where it's like, I don't know, the closest modern example I can think of is maybe Slipknot. And even in that case, we got like what, 3 fucking drummers on stage and 2 dudes playing with keyboards or whatever. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. It seems to me like there could be some fat cut from that motherfucker, but Foreigner, they never had that issue. Everyone seemed to have their place. Everyone had their role, and they wrote tons of fucking great songs. I didn't realize they sold 50 million records. Jesus Christ, that's insane. My next one, and just a heads up, ladies and gentlemen, the next few are going to be more obvious ones from me. The next one, everyone's talking about it. It's Iron Maiden. It is an absolute travesty that Iron Maiden was not allowed in this year. One of the biggest, most iconic heavy metal bands of all time. They've inspired, much like Motorhead, they've just inspired everything. Yeah, there's Peace of Mind right there. Yeah. Speak of the devil. And not just the records, and not just that they had great songs, but there something that came to mind to me the other day. There aren't a lot of like older 80s metal bands that are still selling out stadiums and still making quality music simultaneously. You know, there's Metallica, who are pretty hit and miss. There's Guns N' Roses, who haven't made anything since like the fucking 90s. Chinese Democracy doesn't exist. That's like Axl Rose's 9 Inch Nails fucking wet dream project, to put it lightly. And I don't know, maybe like, does Motley Crue count? I don't know. They're still technically a thing. But Iron Maiden, they kept making great records. They kept selling out stadiums. They kept getting bigger. Their productions are insane. They have giant inflatable devils and robots and fireworks. It's insane. They brought a level of theatricality and appropriate melodrama to this genre that we just didn't get before. They took the genre into much more epic and even progressive territory with records like Seventh Son of a Seventh Son and Somewhere in Time, and in even some of the more modern records. And yeah, let's just be honest. Shit slaps. Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind right behind you, Killers, even the debut, you know, it's a little sloppy, but it's still got some jams on it.
For sure. Yeah.
It's Iron fucking, speak of the devil, Iron fucking Maiden.
Yeah, I
did not plan that, I promise you.
Awesome. And just a quick question, they were on the ballot this year. And of course, people debate what people should be inducted with the band. I know Dennis Stratton was going to be included, who just played guitar on their first album, but then they decided not to include Blaze Bayley, which I wouldn't have included Blaze Bayley myself. I'm just curious if you would have inducted Blaze with the band.
I probably wouldn't have. I probably would have tried to have picked like which members have been a part of the most iconic and most important albums.
Yeah.
Which is no disrespect to Blaze, but let's be honest, he's not there.
Yeah.
He's just not.
No.
I mean, the safe pick, of course, would have been just to induct everyone who's currently in the band. But as far as specifics are concerned, I don't know. And I'm not sure it would matter because the Hall of Fame is weird about this stuff. Like they inducted Robert Trujillo for Metallica, even though he had only been on the one album. Meanwhile, Dave Navarro didn't get inducted with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, despite having been on only one album. Yeah. And I'm just like, all right, neither is especially influential to either band, but why is one in and the other not? Like, I don't.
Yeah, they don't know what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't give a shit about Dave Navarro, but double standards, just doesn't make sense.
Of course. All right, so my number 8 is another band that's a huge classic rock radio band, very melodic, awesome stuff, and that is Boston.
Is Boston not in the Hall of Fame?
No,
I just kind of assumed.
It's like you assume they're in. And this first off, they should be in just for this debut album.
They really should. They really should.
This is one of the greatest selling rock albums of all time. It's stacked full of really every single song on here you'll hear on the radio. 17 times platinum in the United States alone. Their second album went 7 times platinum from a few years later. Really, those two are fantastic. Brad Delp on vocals has one of the best voices of all time. Tom Scholz on guitar is a really great melodic player. Their guitar playing, his guitar playing kind of reminds me almost of like a AOR classic rock version of Iron Maiden's, like it's kind of harmonizing, melodies, that type of thing. Kind of reminds me of that a little bit. But just looking at these songs alone on the first album, More Than a Feeling, Peace of Mind, Rock and Roll Band, Smokin', which is my favorite. Really, all of these.
So many good songs.
Yeah, just great freaking band that you would think again is in, but they're not. Just it's ridiculous. But Boston, that is my number 8.
God, that actually makes me upset now. I think I'm almost more upset about Boston than I am Iron Maiden at this point. Damn. I mean, if I were to make like a list of like top 10 greatest rock albums right now, that would be pretty damn near close to the top. If not maybe even number 1. I don't really know. I'm not really that bright. I can't think. God, I'm going to make a petition. We're going to get Boston in there next year. For me, my next one, yes, it's another obvious pick. I promise I'm going to go into something a little more interesting after, but it's another band where I'm like, how the fuck are they not in there? It's Judas Priest. How? This is a band that arguably paved the way for the quintessential metal sound and image, which isn't, not to speak ill of Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath or Blue Cheer or Deep Purple. They were all mad influential. But when we think metal, like the twin guitars, the roaring vocals, the leather denim S&M fucking bullshit image with motorcycles and fireworks, that's all Judas Priest, man. They paved the way for that. And they're responsible for some of the most iconic albums in the genre: British Steel, Screaming for Vengeance, Painkiller. They continue to still be one of the best live. There's Painkiller right there.
Yeah, right
there. They continue to be one of the best live bands in the entire genre. Like a few years ago, I saw them at what used to be the Air Canada Center with a buddy of mine, and Mastodon was opening, and he's like a total prog nerd. So he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to be there for Mastodon. I don't give a fuck about Judas Priest." And one song into Priest set, and he was just like, oh my God, I'm an asshole. I've been wrong my whole life. Like they just have that power. And similarly, the first time I saw Judas Priest, it's one of the first times and one of the only times, frankly, not to make some kind of grand comment, where I've seen truly one of every person at a show. Like I saw kids maybe no older than me looking like a Diet Axl Rose. And I saw guys that years ago had evidently been playing Judas Priest. Like, this is arguably the quintessential heavy metal band, and they belong in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I've seen them 3 times live, and they're just amazing every time. No matter, even though Andy Sneap is in there right now, primarily instead of Glenn Tipton, which is unfortunate, but they still bring it live for sure.
You know what blows my mind too, and I actually just thought of this. The Hall of Fame, they talk a lot about diversity and such. which is fine, whatever. I don't want to start a spiel. But with that thought in mind, I do find it fascinating that they would like go out of their way to ignore Judas Priest because, you know, Rob Halford is an openly gay man playing in a genre that, let's be honest, does have some issues with like homophobia from time to time. So it's like, why would you not want to acknowledge that? Like,
Yeah.
I could go on forever, which is why I won't. Judas Priest, get in there.
in my opinion, yeah, Rob is the absolute best metal singer of all time. That's my number one. So yeah. But all right. So my number 7, I'm gonna head up to your neck of the woods, Canada, with the band, and that is gonna be Triumph.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm huge
all right,
into Triumph.
I'm down with that.
I'm huge into Triumph. I just did a video recently. My top 10 hard rock singers had Rick Emmett up there. Yes, Gilmore sings as well. The drummer, don't like his voice quite as much. I love Rick's guitar playing as well. Extremely impressive when you consider he's doing all of the guitar, a lot of the vocals. When he does the singing, he does all that guitar work and the vocals, which is extremely impressive. It's a trio, 3-piece band. Arguably, they're definitely one of my favorite trios of all time, one of the absolute best of all time in rock, as far as trios goes, in my opinion. But, you know, a lot of their stuff up through even like Surveillance in 87, that's kind of when they went more glam type metal. I really dig that album as well. This one, which has probably their biggest song, Lay It on the Line, which I love. You know, sometimes I don't love the hits, but that's one where I dig it a lot. And yeah, just a fantastic band. I put them right up there with Rush. I like them better than Rush. I know some people think that's crazy, but
whoa,
yeah,
you just said that. You know what? I'm Canadian, so I'll let it slide as long as we're talking about how badass Canadian stuff is.
Oh yeah, for sure. But Triumph is really an all-time great classic hard rock band, and definitely should be in there. So that is my number 7.
Yeah, I won't argue with that. Fun fact for everyone listening at home: Triumph is not only Canadian, but they are very local to me. So local that my sister went to middle school with Gilmore, the drummers. His name's Gilmore, yes.
Yes.
The daughters went to school together, so we would go to like we went to the middle school graduation, and my dad kind of tapped me on the shoulder and was like, "Is that who I think it is?" And I'm like, and I'm kind of like, I think it is, but I don't want to be that guy who rushes over because we're literally at a fucking middle school graduation. He's not here to see us.
That's awesome. Cool.
And he's actually also the owner of the Metalworks studio here in Toronto, which is where a bunch of bands have recorded a bunch of big records. Voivod has made records there. Rush has made records there. Almost any Canadian rock or pop musician worth their salt has made a record there. Cool. For me, my next pick would be, and this is another one where I could not believe they weren't in the Hall of Fame. We're going into more proggy territory. For me, the next one is King Crimson. This is a band maybe not as big as Pink Floyd, maybe not as big as Genesis, but perhaps even more so influential to prog rock. In the Court of the Crimson King, Red, so many more fantastic records. They've kind of always remained a cult classic. They, in my opinion, remain one of the most influential bands, especially to like prog metal nowadays, like Mastodon, Between the Buried and Me, Opeth, Gojira. They constantly talk about how King Crimson is like the best of the fucking best. And honestly, their earliest records are still better than most of the earliest records from Genesis, Pink Floyd, Jethro Tull, another band that should be in the Hall of Fame. They're not on my list, but you know, fuck it, we're already here. The Hall of Fame has always been very biased towards progressive rock. I mean, for fuck's sakes, it took them like forever to get Rush in there. So I doubt King Crimson ever would get in there, but that doesn't mean I don't want them in there any less.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Good pick. Honestly, I'm not going to lie. I haven't listened to them much, but I've heard nothing but good things about them from classic rock fans and stuff. So maybe I'll have to give them a chance for sure.
Oh, totally. Yeah, go for it, man. In the Court of the Crimson King and Red are probably two of their strongest albums, if I may say so myself. It's all good, mind you, but my 2 cents.
Gotcha, for sure. And all right, so my number 6 is actually going to be my favorite band of all time. That is Megadeth. They're a little down because I'm trying to go in kind of chronological order with historical stuff or whatever, but Megadeth is my favorite band. I've got The Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good cassette tape right here, which is a super cool find I got a while back. But the debut from 85, of course, Dave Mustaine, the mastermind behind the band. He was angry as shit when he recorded and did that album because kind of obviously everybody knows he was in Metallica, got kicked out. But I don't have Rust in Peace. Or do I have it sitting right here? Okay, yeah, it's actually right here. This is my favorite album of all time. I'll just say
one of my favorites as well, actually.
absolute masterpiece. Marty Friedman got the shirt on. His solos are ridiculous all over the album, just top to bottom. Amazing. And another one of my favorite albums of all time is actually Peace Sells. I literally rank these both in the top three. So yeah, and they're super consistent. I'll also say, I guess, since I've got it right here, Sean Drover and Glenn Drover both on this album. I'd say that because I know some more Canadian boys for you there playing on here. You know, they brought it on this album. This is a great album. And yeah, super consistent band, my favorite, and they're super influential to thrash. Arguably the greatest thrash band of all time, in my opinion, they are, but they're definitely deserving. And here at number 6 for me.
No arguments there. I love me some Megadeth. The only thing I would say is that given recent allegations, it would definitely seem it would. Yeah. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but given recent allegations, it would be difficult for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to see them doing that. But at the same time, we're just looking objectively at the music. Megadeth is
keep
one
it
of
just the music. Yeah.
It's the art ahead of the artist. And to be fair, the artist in question that defines Megadeth is still Dave Mustaine. And for him alone, Megadeth deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame. I remember he was actually upset that he wasn't inducted with Metallica because he was like, "Oh, cool, I'm in the Hall of Fame." And then they were like,
I remember that.
No, only people who performed on the albums. And he was like, "Man."
Yeah.
Like, I think they invited him to the ceremony as like a hey, thank you, like honorable mention kind of deal.
Yeah.
But it would still be amazing to see Megadeth in the Hall of Fame. Whether or not the Hall of Fame would feel comfortable inducting another thrash band is an entirely other argument. But
for sure. And just to point out again how just like clueless like the industry is here with this. When Megadeth won their first Grammy for Dystopia, the house band literally started playing Master of Puppets as Megadeth was walking up.
That's right.
It's like, what the hell are you doing, dude? Like, why are you? What the shit?
I would just laugh. I'd get up on stage.
He did kind of address it after. He's like, that was just funny, whatever. But for real, it's like, bro.
Oh, it's hilarious.
How clueless are you? Yeah.
God. Is it possible to get like a video framed? Because I would love to have that hanging on my wall. Someone walks by and they're like, "What's that?" "Oh, it's a funny story." For me, my next band is we're going into more punk hardcore territory. I'm talking Black Flag, punk rock at the time was very much like fuck the government, fuck society. It wasn't especially intelligent. It was more or less a bunch of literal punks just being like, yeah, fuck you and fuck this, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. I got nothing against punk. Black Flag, on top of having invented an entire genre, which in turn paves the way for crossover thrash, metalcore, post-hardcore, alternative metal, arguably sludge metal, they took punk rock into much more introspective territory. The lyrics were more interpersonal. They were dealing with personal issues and not just, man, fuck the guy that I didn't vote for. He sucks because I said so. It's hardcore coming from a real hard, honest place. And people talk shit about hardcore. I don't care. Go for it. Black Flag's still the shit. That debut album is still the fucking shit. Henry Rollins, one of the most iconic figures in hardcore, in punk, and to some extent in metal. He's kind of made that crossover nicely with some of the other stuff he's done over the years. So yeah, Black Flag coming in next for me.
Nice. And just on that Henry Rollins note, it's just funny because I kind of recently just watched Wrong Turn too. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's like a stupid movie with like cannibals, I don't know if I have in the woods or whatever. Yeah, like some redneck hillbilly cannibals. Henry Rollins is in the movie. It's like one of the main roles of the second one. It's hilarious, but he's like an army guy that saves the day. It's like
he's done some weird movies. I couldn't remember the name of it. If I do remember, I'll put it in the bottom, I guess. But he filmed like a weird like mafia thriller film. He filmed it actually right in my hometown of Mississauga, which was weird because I was watching the movie and I'd be like, shit, they're in Port Credit. Shit, I know where that is. Fuck, that's the restaurant where I used to work. What the fuck? Like, it was so bizarre. Fucking fascinating, mind you. And I fucking think he's closing. Who did I have next? Oh, cool. More punk rock.
Cool. Well,
this is another band. This was also, this band was actually up for what?
You skipped me.
Oh, my apologies. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
But I'm so sorry. I get too excited.
Fine,
I'm talking about punk and shitting on the Hall of Fame. Too excited.
For sure. No, it's cool. It's cool. But my number 5 is a band you already mentioned. That's Iron Maiden. So I'll just make it quick. Everything you say, I agree with. I think all around at each freaking instrument, they've got some of the all-time greats. Bruce, one of my top 3 favorite singers of all time. Steve Harris, arguably the best bassist in metal, amazing songwriter. The guitar playing is fantastic from Dave Murray and Adrian Smith specifically. Yannick, pretty good too. I mean, he's been there for 30 years, so I'd include him inducting. But Nico McBrain, great drummer, just all around.
I would hope he would earn that induction after 30 years. I'd feel bad for him.
Yeah, for sure. You know, there's certain fans that like to shit on him because he dances around a little too much on stage, they think. I mean, it's whatever. But yeah, Somewhere in Time is probably a top 15 album of all time for me. Just love that one. That's my favorite Maiden album. Peace of Mind right there. One of my favorites as well. Just great band. Easily should be there. They've sold, I think, if I remember correctly, somewhere in the range of like 100 million albums.
I wouldn't be shocked if it was more than that, to be honest.
Some crazy shit like that. Just they still sell out the arenas worldwide. Very impressive. Just great band. So easily top 10 should be there. Number 5 for me, Iron Maiden.
Yeah, I can't say I'm shocked at all. That's on both of our lists. I wouldn't be shocked if Motorhead and Judas Priest showed up again, come to think of it, which is fine. Fuck it. If anything, that just proves that these bands need to be here.
Yeah.
The next one, I got too excited because I got so excited about talking about this band. They were actually up for nomination this year. They didn't get in. What are you going to do? It's the New York Dolls, kind of proto-punk, garage rock, glam kind of stuff. You know, but it's not the super eloquent and evocative songwriting of David Bowie or Elton John. And it's not even as poignant or as striking as something like the Stooges or the Ramones. It's just kind of dirty and sleazy and gross. And I kind of love it for that. You know, this stuff is way ahead of its time. They're just writing dirty fucking riffs. It's produced so fucking gross. It's so nasty and raw. On the first album as well, the album cover, they're all dressed up in drag and like just being super sleazy and hyper feminine, which I think is kind of badass. There weren't a lot of rock bands at all doing this at the time. You didn't even really get you didn't even really get girl rock bands of the time, like the Runaways doing this kind of stuff. They're just like super edgy and provocative and way ahead of their time. And they write great songs. Their debut album is one of my favorite punk albums of all time. Sophomore is great. And they did a comeback album in 2005. And even that's really great. And like, it's rare that you find like an aging rock band that still sounds good after what, like 30, 25 years or something of being completely inactive. They paved the way for bands like Motley Crue, arguably Kiss and Van Halen as well, and the entire 1980s glam pop metal explosion, as well as, again, punk. So yeah, New York Dolls, it's a crime they didn't get in this year. Crime.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Good pick. And all right, my number 4, another one you've already mentioned. I've got one of their albums right here, Judas freaking Priest. I mean,
wow, is that an original? Because that looks messed up.
Yeah, it is.
You can even see the ring around it. I love it.
Yeah, I try to get original shit for the most part. I mean, it's not all original, and I've got Sad Wings of Destiny right here. This one's old. I don't know if it's original, but it's pretty old. But yeah, again,
it looks pretty old. Yeah,
I've got it right here. But yeah. As you mentioned, you know, metal as we know it, a lot of people kind of attribute like to this album, you know, heavy shit for 1976 for sure. The twin guitar of KK and Glenn. Rob's vocals are amazing. And yeah, just again, they're my second favorite metal band, probably in my top 5 favorite overall bands ever. So absolutely should be there. Love most of their stuff. Painkiller is my second favorite album ever. So yeah, Judas Priest, my number 4.
And if I may say ever so quickly, Painkiller for me is like when somebody asks me like, oh, I'm like totally brand new to heavy metal, where do I go? Painkiller is literally one of the first albums I think of, because it's kind of this fascinating smorgasbord of everything that was kind of happening at the time. Like it's really fast, really heavy, really intense. It's got a little bit of speed metal, a little bit of thrash, even a little bit of power metal. Just an amazing album. Like Judas Priest always kind of keep their ear to the ground, but with that album in particular, they were just like, yeah, let's just totally, what up, my fellow kids?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
I'm not sure how people will respond to my next one. It's not especially controversial, but considering it's Bryce Talks Metal and considering it's the Metal Meltdown, therefore we're going to attract metalheads. I might lose some with this particular name, but I looked it up and it blew my mind that she's not in there. It's Dolly fucking Parton, man. Look, this is one of those few occasions where an artist transcends their genre. Like, she is so massively influential to rock and to pop music, and of course to country. She's influenced almost everyone across the board, almost every woman that dared to pick up a microphone in the late 70s, 80s, and even nowadays. Like, if you ask fucking Miley Cyrus or whatever, the biggest pop singer of the last decade, she's like, yeah, my hero's Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear the argument that, oh, well, she's country, because there are multiple artists that are inducted in both the Country Hall of Fame and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, including Elvis Presley, the so-called king of rock. So for me, this is a case where she transcends country, much like how Michael Jackson transcends pop, much like how the Beatles transcend rock. It's a crime that she's not in there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's interesting. Good pick. I wasn't expecting that, to be honest.
I wasn't either, because I was like, do I want to do Dolly Parton or do I want to do like a fucking thrash metal band?
Yeah.
I was like, no, she needs to be in there. She deserves it. I still jam some Dolly Parton. I don't give a fuck.
Nice. So, all right, my number 3 is going to be Scorpions. This is the only album I have sitting right next to me. I have Love at First Thing somewhere, but Love at First Thing is my favorite from '84. This one I do enjoy quite a bit as well. A lot of people shit on it because they kind of went a little more commercial, glam sounding in '88, but I do dig it a bit.
Good album, though, you know.
Yeah, it is. It is. And, you know, the lineup is cool. Matthias Jabs, who came along after. They started off with Michael Schenker as their lead guitarist in 1972 on Lonesome Crow, which he was like 15 when that album was recorded. Ridiculous stuff. And then they had Ulrich Roth is what he was going by at the time. And this guy, extremely influential and important to the like neoclassical type metal. He was like shredding like classical shit sounding with a lot of that 70s stuff, which is fantastic. And then Michael came back for like half an album. Then they had Matthias Jabs lead guitar. All their lead guitars fantastic. Rudolf Schenker is a great rhythm player. Klaus Meine, one of the best vocalists of all time, in my opinion. Just fantastic band. Another one that sold like 100 million albums. They played arenas for the last like 40 years. They've been around forever. Formed in 1965. They're still together now. So it's like, dude, absolutely ridiculous that Scorpions, that's another one you would think automatically would be in there.
But especially because
I don't know how they're not.
Especially because there are so many like kind of pop glam metal bands that are in the Hall of Fame. Like Bon Jovi was inducted a few years ago. Def Leppard was inducted a few years ago. So it's like, all right, you guys are down with like the big hits and the mainstream guys. So Scorpions, there should be a place there for them. I think it's worth mentioning as well. Scorpions kind of paved the way for a lot of rock music in Germany, because they were probably the biggest band to come out of there for a long time. Banger TV made the argument that they were like a pioneer to power metal, which I don't think I fully agree with, but I understand why they made that comment, because for so many German power metal bands, that was who you looked up to, you know?
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of their 70s stuff, like for the time, it's some of the heaviest stuff around. Like, like He's a Woman, She's a Man, Sails with Sharon, that stuff from like 77-ish, like super heavy for the times. Just amazing stuff. And then they evolved with the times, adapted their sound to fit kind of the more MTV commercial, which I actually like Love at First Thing the best. That's my favorite album by them.
Oh, it's a great album.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, you know, it's still got really hard rock and stuff, a little bit more accessible, but, you know, they're a great band. So they're definitely absolutely very high on my list, Scorps. So,
yeah, I mean, they've always kind of skirted that line of like being accessible, but still being really good. I mean, Blackout has some of my favorite rock songs of all time. No, I'll sing No One Like You at a karaoke bar if it's there. I swear to God, I love that song.
For sure.
And as well, too, like I saw Scorpions a few years ago live, and I didn't know much of Scorpions at the time, or at least I didn't think I did. But every song they played, I was like, holy fuck, I know this song. Yeah. Holy fuck, I know this song. Like, they absolutely deserve their spot in the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
Next one for me might be a little more controversial because of some recent allegations. Well, semi-recent, I guess, where, you know. But, you know, once again, let's just look objectively at the music for a moment. This is an artist who kind of defines the 90s rock scene, kind of defines like super provocative, edgy shit. He pushed gothic rock and alternative and industrial to the highest extreme. It's Marilyn Manson. And, you know, I don't get me wrong, I want to see the old guys in there first. Trust me, no argument there. But let's just kind of look at the math here. The guy sold millions of records, done huge tours all over the world. he has consistently been one of the most controversial, if not the most controversial rock star of this modern era. And he continues to be extremely influential because of it. And full disclosure, one of the first rock albums I ever bought was a Marilyn Manson album. It was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Mechanical Animals, which I still think is a great album, honestly. So again, I'd love to see Scorpions and Judas Priest and all these guys get in first, but if there's room for Marilyn too, please, because I can't think, aside from Nirvana, I can't think of anyone else more influential to the modern wave of rock music. I really can't.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan personally, but I wouldn't argue against it. I definitely see why he could get in and should get in for sure. Nice. So my number 2 is just going to be an individual guy. You know, he's been the frontman of several really big, great classic metal bands, and that's Ronnie James Dio. Somehow he did not get inducted with Black Sabbath. It's like, how?
Yeah.
How is he was singer for Rainbow, Sabbath, and then the Dio band, all fantastic. You know, I'm just going to induct Ronnie James Dio himself, not like the band Dio or anything, but, you know, again, a guy that was around forever. He was in the band Elf, which I actually have one of their albums for some reason. It's okay. It's like just weird, like boogie classic rock. And then Rainbow's amazing. A lot of really good stuff. First 3 Rainbow albums with Ronnie are amazing. Long Live Rock and Roll.
All 5 out of 5, literally.
Rising and Long Live Rock and Roll. And the first one, you know, all great. And then, of course, Heaven and Hell is my favorite Black Sabbath album. Really, all 3 of the Sabbath albums and the Heaven and Hell band album he was on, which is kind of, I mean, technically it's not Black Sabbath, but whatever. And a lot of the Dio stuff is fantastic. Just one of the best voices ever. He is my second favorite singer. So Ronnie James Dio.
He gave us this. He gave us this.
Yep.
For that reason alone, he needs something.
Be careful. Be careful. Freaking Gene Simmons might come on here and try to sue us.
Let him try. God damn. I got nothing to say about him. Well, I mean, that's a lie, but I'll spare you that. I guess the question is, like, no argument Dio belongs in there with some project. I guess the question is, what project do we put him in there with? Because, like, Dio, the band, I don't feel is big enough to even reach the Hall of Fame. And Rainbow's kind of like this moment in time. I don't know. But then again, I guess I would have said the same about the Go-Go's, and for that matter, even the New York Dolls. So one of them is in, one of them I want to be in. So who knows? Maybe there's still a spot for Rainbow, or at the very least, some kind of Dio project, because he deserves it.
That, or just himself, Ronnie James Dio, get in there.
Yeah, fuck it. I mean, they just put in like Randy Rhoads by himself, not with Quiet Riot, which was weird. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? It's the closest he might ever get, so I'll take it. Fine.
Yeah.
For me, we're dipping back into the 90s a little bit. But again, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame talks a lot about wanting to, they put out a statement today where they were like, we want to honor the music of today's youth. All right, if you want to do that, then let's talk about Rage Against the Machine, goddammit. Let's talk about the fact that there is no other band as simultaneously influential to hip hop, to alternative music, to rock and roll, to hardcore punk, and to heavy metal as Rage Against the Machine. Let's talk about the fact that Tom Morello has one of the most unique and easily identifiable guitar styles of all time. Like, you might not like his style, but you know it. Like, you know it. The fucking,
especially if you played Guitar Hero like me growing up. A duel against them on one of those, I remember doing. So.
I remember when that came out, and I'm just like, are we sure this is a guitar? Like, that was, and it blows my mind still, to be honest. Not to mention the lyrics. You know, the 90s was like, oh, I'm sad and I'm gonna vent about it, and I don't know where to put this energy. Rage Against the Machine was like, no, we got work to do. Let's get shit done. Like, they were incredibly socially, politically active. They got shit done. They paved the way for rap metal and nu metal, which I guess is not a good thing technically, but in the grand scheme of things, it is. I don't know, depending on who you ask. It just, and they've been nominated a couple times. Tom Morello, if I'm not mistaken, is on the committee board or whatever. He apparently at one point stood up in the middle of a meeting and said, why isn't Kiss and Rush in the Hall of Fame? Like, apparently he was instrumental to bringing them to the Hall of Fame. So even if, you know, they've earned their spot. Again, even if they are a newer band, I think they've 100% earned that spot.
Oh yeah, for sure. I wouldn't argue it. And Tom, definitely a very unique guitar sound and good player for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So my number 1 is going to be Ted Nugent.
Whoa.
Yeah, I've
You know what? On some level, I'm not shocked. I'm just shocked it wasn't Motorhead because, like,
yeah, I mean,
'cause
again, like you said, like I said, and you said, there's a lot of bands and stuff. You know, I'm gonna have them in the honorable
touche,
mentions. But
touche.
so to say with Ted, strictly musical speaking, you know, I feel like a lot of people forget just how good and big he was, especially back in the day. So I'll say, if you're looking at a rock star, I feel like he's the complete package. When you look at, he plays great. He got great riffs, great solos. His tone is awesome. His voice back in the day, especially, it's not the greatest, but he could definitely hold his own. And the longevity of his career, he started back in the mid 60s, 1967 with the Amboy Dukes. He's had moderate success, at least, with 3 different bands. He adapted to the time, starting with that psychedelic in the mid late 60s with the Amboy Dukes, to hard rock with his solo career, to kind of glamish type metal in the mid 80s, late 80s, and Damn Yankees had a double platinum album. The guy has played on 10 albums that went at least gold between Damn Yankees and his solo career. You know, as I said, I think people forget just how big he was. He was co-headlining stadium tours throughout the mid to late 70s with like Aerosmith. Just to compare with like Kiss, their 1977 album Love Gun went one-time platinum, and Cat Scratch Fever went triple platinum. It's just, you know, he's a great player, and I just really love his style of play. All of his albums for the most part I like a lot, and I've got this one here was actually the first vinyl I ever bought, Double Life Gonzo, which is,
oh wow, look at him. He looks like a goddamn animal.
Yeah, the Motor City Madman. That's another thing. He put on a great show. I didn't get to see it back then, obviously, unfortunately, but a lot of people say it was just high energy. The loudest concert they ever saw was Ted. Really dig this album too. This one, actually, it's interesting. He's had a lot of different singers, and I'll say I would induct his whole original band, which is Derek St. Holmes on vocals. He's the guy who sings Stranglehold.
Great guy.
Voice. Yeah, great voice, great rhythm guitarist. Cliff Davies on the drums, who was his original drummer from 75 to 81, and Rob Grange, who actually co-wrote Stranglehold with him, the bass player. But he also had freaking Meatloaf singing like 6 songs on here. I don't know how many people are familiar with that, but he had Meatloaf singing 6 songs. Derek sang a few. He sang one on here. Just, yeah, that's enough about Ted. Ted, just great player. And,
He's
my number one. And,
monumental.
Last thing, I say he's pretty influential too. A lot of people kind of forget. There's been like Dave Mustaine, Tom Morello, like you said. You know, even though they obviously don't agree politically, that's just the musical standpoint. Tom and him are good friends, you know, and they talk, they're friends, they've hung out backstage at concerts, and he says, you know, we've got more in common than you would think. But yeah, he's influenced Tom. Gary Holt has said he's a big influence on his playing, to name a few. But yeah, Ted, that's my number one for sure.
Yeah, no argument there. And it's a shame because, and to some extent, Ted has done this to himself, to be fair.
A little bit. Yeah.
But because of comments that he's made about, you know what, I'm not even going to repeat it, but because of comments he's made in the past, it's difficult from a business perspective. I would feel uncomfortable if I was running the Hall of Fame. So I totally understand the hesitation, but you know, again, let's just look at the music.
Yeah, if we're just looking strictly musical, like I don't think there's any denying the guy was great, influential, awesome player.
Yeah, I can't think of a lot of other 80s or 70s rock guitarists that don't worship the ground he stands on, aside from like Eddie Van Halen, maybe. I mean,
yeah, those are like my top 2. Eddie Van Halen, Ted Nugent, those are like my top 2 favorite guitarists. And Marty.
If I'm not mistaken, Stranglehold has been voted like the #1 guitar solo of all time in like Guitar World magazine or some shit like that as well.
Oh yeah, just the whole song. That I would say my pick, if you're gonna say greatest rock song of all time, I pick Stranglehold. Just all around, everybody's clicking on all cylinders. The opening riff is iconic, amazing. The vocals from Derek are great. The bass sounds amazing. The drumming is awesome from Cliff. And that solo, which apparently I read that he recorded it in the first take. It's like a 2.5-minute solo. I don't know if that's true.
Of course he did.
if he did, though, that's like ridiculous.
If he did that, I mean, he is the Motor City, or was the Motor City Madman, depending on who you ask, I guess. Yeah. So who knows, man? Plus back then, man, if you couldn't do multiple takes, you either got it or you got it. Because otherwise they would have had to stitch everything together like it was a fucking God knows what. Yeah, no argument with Ted Nugent. I have a feeling some people will be shocked by me saying that because apparently I'm a super hyper liberal moron who can't handle anything semi-conservative. Whatever. Apparently me having political opinions means I can't enjoy a song. I don't know how that translates.
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, I say Sebastian Bach is like my top 10 favorite singer. Ted Nugent's my top 10 favorite guitarist. Those guys are completely opposite. I don't care. the thing is, Sebastian got a great voice, Ted, great guitarist. So whatever. I don't care.
Were they not in like some kind of like MTV reality show together? Come to think of it.
They were called Supergroup, and that's the thing that annoys me a little bit about Sebastian these days is he completely like shits on Ted now, even though like 15 years ago they were good buddies. Like there's clips of him like, when I was a kid, I worshipped Rob Halford and Ted Nugent. Now I get to be on a show with them, and this is amazing. And he's trying to get his autograph for Weekend Warriors, and now he's just like, F Ted Nugent. Fuck him.
Yeah, it's like, dude, pick one.
Like, did you can still? It's like you can still like his music.
One.
Yeah, for sure.
Ted Nugent. I can't argue with that, and I won't. For me, the final band is one where I'm like, I tried not to think about like a lot of like super heavy bands because I'm like, the reality is the Hall of Fame is just never going to induct them. But I kept thinking about this one band, and I couldn't stop thinking about them. Slayer, honestly. This is a band arguably as iconic to metal, as definitive to metal as Black Sabbath or Judas Priest or Metallica. They're one of the few thrash bands that actually had a really strong following and remained pretty consistent going into the 90s. Rain and Blood paved the way for so much, more so than any previous record, I would argue, from Venom or Celtic Frost or Possessed or whoever. Everything that Metallica wasn't, Slayer was. As Metallica got more mainstream, more accessible, Slayer said, fuck this, we like our corner. If I'm not mistaken, Kerry King has literally said that in interviews before, the controversy has done nothing but fuel their popularity and their intense legacy. And it's gotten to the point where it doesn't matter what metal show, or for that matter, what rock show you go to. You scream Slayer, guess what you're going to hear? You're going to hear 1,000 sweaty assholes screeching Slayer.
Yeah, man, for sure.
It's what more can I say? They are as important to this genre, perhaps even more so in some ways to Metallica, just as far as defining thrash metal. And I couldn't really think of any other heavy band I would want in there if they were to throw one in there right now. No disrespect to Megadeth or anyone else we could throw up there. But for me, it's just like, man, gun to the head. I'm sorry. I'm going with Slayer.
Oh yeah. I love Slayer too. They're one of my like top 20 bands all time. So no complaints with that pick. And you want to run through some honorable mentions if I can real quick?
Yeah, go for it. You start.
All right. So again, there's a ton, but just a couple I wanted to list are Thin Lizzy, which I love. This is Johnny the Fox from 76, one of my favorites by them. One of the best live albums from the 70s right here. Just a great band, great guitar playing. Phil Lynott was a really cool frontman. Wasp, obviously not the greatest selling band or anything ever, but they're one of my favorites. Like I said, I'm not going to include all of my top 10 favorite bands on this list, but they're one of my top 10 favorite bands, if I'm being honest. Wasp, amazing stuff. I'll say some Japanese bands I really love are Loudness and Anthem, consistent, great classic metal bands. Motorhead, again, like you thought was going to be on my list. Very close. I mean, I could rotate them in depending on the day. Absolutely love them. King Diamond, Merciful Fate, Dokken, and Rat are the others I wanted to list off real quick. Of course, there's hundreds of others, but that's all I got. Yeah, for sure. That's what I got. That's what I got for today, though.
I could actually picture Rat being in there. I could.
They were huge. In the 80s, dude.
I mean, some people would argue that debut one of the first glam metal. Speak of the Devil. That is the very first album I ever bought on CD. Oh shit! No kidding.
Out of the cellar, yeah. Huh. R.I.P. Tawny Katane. She just passed away.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Anthem and Loudness would be interesting. I can't see it happening, but it would be cool because they do kind of pave the way for a lot of like Japanese rock and metal.
Yeah,
that'd be cool. Great bands, more importantly.
For sure.
I think for me, God, I'm trying to think. Thin Lizzy as well comes to mind. Scorpions also comes to mind. Dio comes to mind. Some of these we've mentioned, so I will simply refer everyone to what you've said. Soundgarden comes to mind as well. They kind of predate grunge a little bit. They kind of paved the way for alternative music to get heavier, to get weirder, to get more progressive and avant-garde to some extent. Plus, rest in peace, Chris Cornell. I figured for that reason they would already be in there, to be honest, because the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame loves pandering to dead people. They love it. God, who else? Kate Bush comes to mind. A Tribe Called Quest. Boston. I can't believe Boston's not in the
Yeah.
Hall.
We could just sit here
Boston.
all night, listen to
Oh,
shit on.
there's like hundreds of bands. But I guess a big one as well to officially wrap this up for me would be maybe the Misfits. Not as influential to punk as, say, the Sex Pistols or the Clash, but with much like how Black Flag took the genre into totally different territory, so did the Misfits. They were just like, yeah, let's have fun, let's party, let's drink, let's kill something, let's talk about horror movies and just be weird. Danzig, one of the most iconic figures in punk and in metal, and that skull is iconic. I mean, people buy that skull, they buy patches of it, they buy backpacks with it on it at fucking Hot Topic without even knowing what it is, because that skull is just so iconic. But yeah, I guess that's it for me. Again, I'm sure if you gave me 5 minutes, I could think of like 100 fucking bands from all across the realms of rock and country and hip hop and metal, and we'd be here for hours.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, dude, thanks, Robert. This was great again. Yeah, thanks for having me on the Metal Meltdown here.
Thank you. Everyone you probably have subscribed to him because he's got way more subscribers than me. But if you haven't, go check out his channel. He talks about metal. Duh. So do I. If this is by chance your first time tuning in, you know the fucking deal. Press the goddamn button. It's been a pleasure having you here, Bryce. Y'all have yourself a fantastic fucking day.